Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on where you're calling in from. Thanks for attending this session today on closing techniques. In sales, closing happens throughout the entire phone call or a face-to-face meeting. A lot of people consider the time when you ask for the sale the close. So the close would be considered the conclusion, right? However, with that thinking, in the beginning of the phone call, you're going to come to the conclusion as to whether or not you have a potential or qualified buyer so that you're going to invest time into them. And basically, whether you're talking to them or meeting with them, it's the same thing. You want to kind of make sure that you're going to move forward with progress towards making a sale so that you're not wasting your time. This allows you to continue moving forward in your presentation. And then throughout the call, you will have what's called trial closes. As an example, after I review and assess my client's needs, I repeat them back to them and say, so let me get this straight, this is what you're looking for. And then I say, did I miss anything? So then I can conclude that I can move forward in my presentation, meaning they have to respond yes or no. They say, yeah, you got it all. Great, that means I can now, I've closed that portion of the assessing needs section of my presentation. And now I'm going to move onward into the next session. So now this also happens at several points throughout your entire sales presentation, which allows you to narrow down options while maintaining their buying desire. Because of course you want the client to be interested as you're moving forward so that you know you're making progress and you're headed towards, the Wizard of Oz at the end of the yellow brick road, which is you want to close the sale. Which leads to my final point. When you finally do get to that end, you're coming to the conclusion of your entire sales presentation and closing the sale. So what we're going to talk about today are very simple methods in which you can close, because a lot of people I speak to, they actually don't have any closing statement whatsoever. They're not actually going through the process to allow themselves to be in a position to close the sale. For instance, you may hear people say to a client, or you may have said it yourself, something that's more comfortable to them, which doesn't put pressure, at least they seemingly don't think it puts pressure on them. And they'll say this to a client, so what do you think? Or how do you like it? Or do you want to go ahead with this? It's very permission-based and not very authoritative, not very confident. You should already know what they think if you asked questions and assessed their needs and provided them with the solution. You should know that they like it. You should already have qualified that they want to go ahead with the sale. So what I'm going to do is give you some better ways to phrase a closing statement so that you get the response that you want. Now, for a minute, I want to go off topic slightly. The response that we want at the end of a phone call is either yes or no. By saying yes or no, I mean we don't want what I call a maybe. We don't want someone to say, you know what, I need to think about it, or can you send me some information? Let me talk to my husband about this or wife. Those are maybes. And what happens is, well, let me define why it's called a maybe, because maybe you'll get that sale, right? That's why I call it a maybe. And what happens is we start to chase those maybes by calling them a couple of times, maybe 2 days later, or a couple of days later after that, sending them emails, wondering why they don't pick up the phone and they're not responding back. So according to statistics, and this comes from me speaking in front of between 150 and 300 people over a dozen events across a year and a half, statistically it shows that when you do let people go without qualifying the real reason you're letting them go, you will lose 80 to 100% of those maybes. I'm sure that's resonating with some people on the phone and saying, yeah, you know what, I hardly ever get these people back on the phone. That's because you didn't qualify what that reasoning was why they needed to get off the phone. So again, we want to focus on getting a yes or a no. If someone flat out says, no, I hate you, I don't have the money, I can't afford this, that's a good thing, because now you get to move closer to the yes, and you're able to clear your pipeline. So you get these people out of the way. You don't have to call them back anymore. You can just simply add them to an automated drip email responder, stay in touch with them, maybe follow up a year later, 6 months later, see if their financial position has changed, whatever it is. Hopefully you're taking good notes on this stuff, and you can follow up and potentially have a sale down the road. But the point is, on a no, you don't have to invest or waste time chasing them like you do with a maybe. So we want to get to the bottom of it. We want to get to a yes or no, preferably a yes, obviously, because that's what pays the bills. So what we're going to do is go forward with that to put you in the position of getting to yes. So the first one I wanted to cover is an assumptive close. If anyone was on last week's training about the sales script, it literally says, do me a favor, grab a pen and a piece of paper. I'm going to tell you what you're getting. I want you to write it down. Or I'm going to go over what you're getting. Or I want you to write down what you're getting. I am assuming that they are buying. I'm assuming the sale, because the example I always use in this is, and this is a true story, I was looking for a gray button-down shirt that actually matched this pair of shoes that I have. They're kind of like rockish Steve Madden shoes. And I wore them on the Go Help Norbeck's speaking tour because out of respect, I wore a suit, but I don't ever wear a suit. So I didn't wear a tie, and I had to have something that kind of rocked out a little bit and represented what I considered my image. So I had these cool shoes. So I wanted to get this gray button-down shirt. And I walk into, I think it was Macy's men's store at the time. And I say to the salesperson, I'm looking for a gray button-down shirt. I'm usually a medium or a large slim fit, and I want to spend about like 80 to 100 bucks. So the guy comes out with a shirt. He has this size, medium, try it on, fits me. It's the gray color. I was like, yeah, it's a gray color. And it was like $50. Do you think he said, would you like to buy it? Or what do you think? No, he said, great, let's go ring it up. He assumed the sale because he gave me what I wanted, and I confirmed that it was what I wanted. So there should never be an issue if your sales process is correct and you're assessing the needs. You should be able to assume the sale. So let's get into a couple of the phrases that allow you to do that. All right, let's submit the policy now. You can log on the internet while we're on the phone together, right? And you notice how I assumed that they can log on the internet while we're on the phone together. Because I did a little study when I had my own agency, and I had one salesperson who said, how are all these people doing online submissions and this was in the senior market? I have to mail out every single policy. And I decided to listen to a couple of her recorded calls, and what she was saying was the key. She would say, so do you want to submit the policy online, or would you rather me mail you an application? So everyone took the ejector seat button, hit the ejector button and said, I'd rather you mail it to me. So she lost a ton of sales that way because people weren't mailing, not the percentage that we wanted. They were not mailing the policy back because she was throwing out that question to allow them to make the decision and them to control the outcome. We need to control the outcome. If we have a good product, you know your stuff, you're serving the client properly, you create a good benefits package, you want to assume the sale because it's important that they buy the good benefits package from you rather than get misled by another agent who may not be looking out for the client. So this is one of the things is let's submit the policy now. Another thing, I've often said this, so you're going to use your checking account for this? I'm going to assume it. I'm not going to say credit card. I'm not going to say anything else. And they have to say yes or no, right? We have to say yes or no. They're not going to say maybe, or they might say maybe. I say, well, which would you prefer? And we're going to get to where that comes in later. But you want to make sure you're just assuming. So you're going to use a checking account for this? Well, is that my only method of payment? Yeah, that's what most clients use. Again, I'm just guiding people to close the sale and to get them to commit. Because what happens a lot of times is we get to the end of a sale and someone says something like, oh, hey, can you just, send me information and call me in a couple of days? And they don't commit to a time, meaning, sure, I'll call you Thursday. Oh, I'm not sure if Thursday would be good. Just try me anytime you want. Or agents will just try anytime they want without confirming a date and time. And that's not getting a real commitment. You want to really make sure that are you investing your time properly when it is a maybe? As I alluded to earlier, you want to qualify what the reason is they're getting off the phone so that you can have a time to call them back and you will know or have the answer to whatever it is that they need to understand before committing. Next one is, all right, great, I'm going to start this today for you. I'm going to date the policy today. We're going to submit it. Everything is just to plant in their mind that I'm not just giving you a consultation. I'm not a kiosk at a mall where you could pick out, brochures about travel. we're doing this. I am your agent. I am going to walk you through the process. I am investing my time, which is valuable. So we are going to be doing this. Now, I don't want it to come off as something, it should never be arrogant. It should never be condescending. It should be controlled, as in not, a lot of people say, my spouse or something or my boss controls me. I don't mean it in that manner at all. I mean it's that you're guiding your client to purchase a policy. Because let's face it, that's your job, right? That's the reason you're on the phone with them. That's what they expect from you. Believe it or not, if they're going to stay on the phone with you for 35, 40 minutes on a phone call, giving you personal information, telling you what their needs are, they want a solution. They want to buy from you. So our job is to fulfill that need and do our job and close the sale. So those are a few examples of assumptive closes that you may or may not want to throw into your presentation. You want to try it. We're going to get to the next one that some people feel a little more comfortable with. It's called the preference close. Preference closes are very simple. It's basically saying, what do you prefer to a client? To kind of give them a little bit of power in the decision making, but more importantly, it forces them to make a buying decision. And I'll give you an example. So I'll often say to people at the end of a close, if you watched last week's session, so would you like to use your checking or savings account for this? Oh, I'll use my checking. Or can I use a credit card? It opens up the dialogue in a different manner than if you just say something like, hey, what do you think? Because again, you're guiding the client down the process it takes. Because here's something to keep in mind. If we get on the phone and we say, we're an independent agent, or, I'm an insurance agent, and they know we have competition, they may not know the procedure. Still, even though everything is kind of gravitated towards online with Esurance and everything is gravitating towards people submitting policies online, but not everyone understands the process. And when I used to sell full time, I would hear people say, hey man, this sounds great. So what do I do now? And I would say, oh, we're going to submit the policy online. And that's what allowed me to tailor my presentation to explain to people, hey, so now what we do is we're going to submit the policy online, et cetera, et cetera. Because they need to understand the process. They may hang up the phone thinking, well, now what do I do? I got this information. So it's our job to educate them, right? So I want to start this process. So, hey, how would you like to use your checking or savings account? Well, I guess I would use my checking. All right, great. Now we're going to just take a couple of minutes, submit the policy online, and boom, bang, boom, you're in the thick of it. Okay, so another preference close would be, do you want this to start today or on the 1st? Or you could say you want to start today or on the 15th, depending on where you are. Now, that's only if you want to do this. I don't really like this because they may put off the sale. So I'm just giving you this option if you don't feel comfortable with what now says at the top of the screen, assumptive closes. I would say use this at your own risk. However, maybe you want to gauge the validity of a client, meaning, let me give it to you this way. If someone says, oh, hey, so do I have to give you my checking account today? You can say, oh, well, do you want this to start today? And end it there, or say on the 1st, or when do you want this to start? Again, I wouldn't go there at all because I like to, as I said, kind of control the direction of things and not really give them a way out. But I said if you are uncomfortable with assuming the sale and taking the authoritative position, you can take this more sensitive action step instead. And do you prefer the silver or the bronze plan? But yeah, so you want to make sure you're focusing on, what do you prefer? Do you prefer a higher deductible or a lower deductible? You can use a preference closing throughout your presentation so that you are guiding them down the road to making a decision. And also, as I said earlier in the introduction, you're eliminating other choices and narrowing it down. So you could say, well, do you prefer a higher deductible or a higher monthly price? Things of that nature. Any way you can figure out and start to plant in your mind how to give your client a couple of choices without giving them complete control of the sale will be beneficial. Next one. This is the most crazy psychological close on the planet because for some reason people want what they can't have, right? And it shifts their perspective, but I want that now, and it's really crazy. I've never dove into the psychology of it, but for some reason it works. And it's a really interesting way of changing someone's perspective. And I'll give you an example. First off, the takeaway close for me is generally used when money comes up and money is an issue, right? If someone says, hey, well, I really don't have the money. You say, okay, well, then you can't get this, right? Now, that's in its most simple nonsense form. I'm going to get into some real ones. If you have a client that says, it's too expensive, or do you have anything cheaper? This is a takeaway close. Yeah, I can find you something cheaper as long as you don't mind giving up some of the benefits you wanted, because I am giving them what they asked for as closely as possible, meaning they wanted this rich benefit plan, accident coverage for the kids. Maybe we added on that new Health Depot product, which rocks, to make it a zero cost plan if they're in the hospital longer 5 days. We'll be getting into some of the training on that next week. If anyone's interested in our daily trainings, check that out. But now they have to think. If I say, yeah, I can find you something cheaper as long as you don't mind giving up some of the benefits you asked for. Now they have to think in their head, well, do I? And here's the interesting part. There's a large percentage of people that all of a sudden have the money. And they say, no, you know what? I want those benefits. And they made a buying decision in their mind. The second thing that happens is someone will really tell you, you know what? I really just need it to be a little cheaper, because when the price increases a year from now, I still want to make sure I can afford it. That's important to us as agents, right? This is a residual-based business. So we want to make sure we're looking long-term with our clients. So keep that in mind. And when someone says, I need something cheaper, you can use that as a tool and say, hey, you know what? That's probably a good point, because your rate's going to go up a bit next year. We want to make sure you're comfortable. So yes, I could do that for you as long as you don't mind giving up some of the benefits you wanted. And then if they say, no, I do need something cheaper, great. They made a buying decision. If you can provide something cheaper, they're going to get it. But this is how a takeaway close works. Same thing. Well, I can't pay for this today. Now, this has to be done with a lot of grace and tact. None of this can sound like argumentative or anything. So, hey, even though you need this right away, maybe it's okay to risk it and go uninsured for a while. The point of this is not to misguide your client, because if they say, yeah, you're right, I will risk it, you will say, well, I don't really recommend that. I mean, are you sure? Because anything can happen. And I've been in this business a long time. And I would use the example of when I had a client it was a Friday afternoon, calls me up and he's like, hey, man, I'm going to need to think about it and hold off a minute on this. And I was like, are you sure? Because I had an accident plan with a health plan package combined. And I'm like, because, anything can happen over the weekend. And he's like, no, I just want to wait and think about it for a couple of days. And I'm like, well, I wouldn't advise that, but okay, I'm going to respect it because it's your decision. Are you sure? Yes. By the time I got in on Monday morning, there was a message from him on my answer machine. He ended up in the emergency room over the weekend and wanted to know if he could backdate the insurance and start it on that past Friday, which, as everyone knows, no, you can't. He got stuck because he didn't listen to me. So I might use that story with someone who does say, yeah, you know what, I will risk it. However, what I would do first is add the next component to this statement, if it's applicable. So, hey, even though you don't need this right away, maybe it's okay to risk it and go uninsured for a while. Your wife will be okay with that, right? Now, listen, I'm only bringing this up. It's kind of, it's not as common, but I think that would get my client thinking. So my point is, sometimes to take care of people, you have to risk going to the extreme. This one goes to the extreme because we should never allow anyone to walk around with any insurance. This is designed to imply to them that, hey, man, you know what? Yeah, I don't really want to go uninsured for a while because you never know. And for the most part, if it's someone who is uninsured currently, they probably had medical bills. They don't want to risk it. So I would say, and this works, I would say it's safe to use this. Again, these are additional ways if you're not assuming the sale or if you have some resistance and hesitation. Now, this is not necessarily, it's kind of connected to what people call objections, but not directly. And that's a whole nother session. Anyway, all right, let's go to the free trial close. This is where you must be an expert in your field. If anyone has ever watched an infomercial, what do they say? There's a money-back guarantee. Try it for 30 days. If you're not satisfied, send it back, and we will refund your money plus your shipping, right? It's called a free trial. We can do the same thing. If you finally get to the point where someone really is on the fence and they haven't made a decision, a really simple way to handle that. Hey, you have nothing to worry about. By law, you can return this within 10 days, 30 days, and get a full refund. So that you take away the pressure of them feeling like, oh my God, what am I buying? I'm signing over my firstborn. I'm writing in blood, blah, blah, blah. Whatever is making them stress out, you can remove that worry. Now, this is literally from United Health One's website, frequently asked questions. If I apply for a personal or family health plan, do I have to buy it? No. You may cancel your application anytime during the underwriting process. Most plans provide a free look period after issue. So you have to know which plans do if you plan on using this statement, which I'll go back to. Because it really is, listen, I don't know what's making you hesitate, but you have nothing to worry about. We're only just seeing if you're going to get the insurance. Meaning they may not, their banking may not go through for whatever reason, especially if it's in, someone who's over 65. They may not get it. They may get declined, right? We don't know what's in their medical history, whether they're telling us or not. Obviously, with the new health reform, it isn't an issue, but you still need to get the policy submitted and get them to relax by saying you have nothing to worry about. By law, you can get a full refund. But again, you have to know which states and when and where. All right, so now I'm going to give you the last component that is my favorite close of all time. I unfortunately did not create it. I am only sharing it. I call it the 5 magic words. Anyone who has known me over the last decade in insurance will have heard this before. It is the most non-confrontational closing of all time that I have ever discovered or used, and other agents have said the same thing. It is the easiest way. So if you don't want to be authoritative, right, you could say, hey, so what do you think? The benefits are what you're looking for? Yes. And then you're going to tell them the 5 magic words. Why don't you try it? And here's what happens. For some reason, again, the psychology of this is important. People will say, yeah, why don't I try it? I mean, it's a good price. It's the plan I wanted. The agent's awesome. It's a good company. The benefits are what I asked for. Yeah, I'll try it. And you do have to shut up and be quiet after you say, why don't you try it? Now, I use this mostly if and when I get hit with any type of hesitation or what people call objections. Hey, I need to speak to my husband and I'm going to cover that, blah, blah, blah. And then say, okay, any other questions? No. Why don't you try it? This is what's interesting. It doesn't seem like they're signing their life away. It's just simply, why don't you just try it? Why don't you just check it out? Give it a test spin. It releases any of the stress that comes with pulling out their wallet, getting their checking account, trusting somebody over the phone who they don't really know, since it's your first time calling. Someone might say, well, you know what? I want to make sure my doctor's in the network. But whatever it is, if someone does have a response to why don't you try it, we get to respond and keep going forward with progress to close. And then maybe you want to bring in one of the other closes we talked about. So do you want to use your checking account or your savings for this? Oh, well, I'll use my checking, because if you've established that you gave them the solution to whatever made them hesitate if you asked this question, you have to always still go forward. I want to add one more thing. Anyone can read a sales presentation that is written out, a script, right? You could be 15 years old and do that. The real skill set and savvy comes in at the very end, at the close of the sale, because that's where the work starts. If they don't immediately say yes, you obviously have work to do. And this is why you see there are several components, or I should say a skill set to selling, which a lot of people overlook. I'm going to end on this statement. I know there's an article I just read the other day about, they asked a question, and I mentioned this on one of our meetings. Are people born to sell? And a lot of people said yes. And I say yes in that, one of the meetings I've done was that we ask a lot of questions. And that is a key component of selling. But no one is born with the ability to sell. They are born with certain traits that are beneficial to sales. Just like there are people born with traits that are beneficial to being a mechanic. That's the expression I used, or I mean the example I used. And, traits that allow them to be a dancer. You still have to learn how to fix a car. You still have to learn how to dance. You have to learn how to sell. For whatever reason, it's become this, okay, you're breathing and you're warm, you're hired. You got a good personality, you're hired. Excellent. And there's this revolving door in sales that is greater than any other career choice I have ever seen. And it's because people don't necessarily keep learning or initially learn the whole skill set it takes to sell, and it's involved. If any of you are not where you want to be, you may want to assess where your level of skills are and relate it to, wow, you know what, that's true. I don't have that overall skill set. And I was just having a great conversation last night with a gentleman I met in New York City, and he's actually a business coach and a sales trainer. And he said something about you could take the best salesperson. Actually, his example was really cool. He said you could take Laurence Olivier, who is a brilliant actor, put him in a Coliseum, and with no audience, what does it matter? Meaning every salesperson needs to have a client. And I said, I always say that every salesperson needs a client. You need the sales skills. You need product knowledge. And I'm going to add, you probably need, in this day and age, technology and systems knowledge. So it is up to you to ask for the sale, use these closing techniques, position yourself to be skilled expert to your clients, because they deserve that, as do you, because then your book of business will grow and grow and grow, and that's what we want to happen.